I'm very passionate about the education aspect of cannabis usage because there's so many benefits that I think people don't realize. There's such a negative connotation with people who partake of being like lazy or shiftless, but instead of taking a lot of like pharmaceutical drugs, there's been research that shows that it can help, with ailments and autoimmune disorders.
I wouldn't necessarily say that the topic of drugs triggers me for a very, very long time, probably until I was 27, and I'm 31 now. I was completely averse to drug use. I stayed away from it at all costs, probably partly due to family and things that I experienced when I was younger, kind of the peripheral effects of drug use. But now I feel like I'm a lot more open-minded about the subject.
I would say that this topic is something that I am passionate about for that exact reason, the fact that there have been people in my life that were affected by drugs and, some of which have come a really long way, like recovery is possible if you've been in a really bad place. And I think the fact that this is another thing that people just don't talk enough about, even in the workplace, even in school, like I think we just need to talk about it because it's a problem. So anything that needs, light to be shed, I'm always gonna wanna talk about. I kind of joke sometimes with friends that do or have had a history about never being really good at drugs because I tend to be a really like straight edge type A person that doesn't like being out of control of situations. So no, never.
And it's even too with like, I think it was on Vice, they were talking about like it was a black couple who's, who were in the cannabis industry, but they're like, there's not a lot of us.
Yeah.
They're like a lot of us are being blocked, they're like blackballed from even getting into that industry to make that money, but we're the ones that are locked up the most for it.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, if you
it takes time for policy to reach everybody. And by everybody, I mean law enforcement and so on to actually enforce the way it's written.
Yeah.
The Emancipation Proclamation happened, and then in the South it didn't. You know what I mean?
They didn't get released until June. Like think about for 6 more months you were still a slave. Yeah. Like it took that longer. They just were not relaying.
And then they made them chain gang, part of the chain gang anyway. So really,
so then you were indentured servants, or
and that's
then
people who didn't even know that it
sharecropping
for like decades.
Yeah,
like that's very ingrained in our society, like that way. And then also a really excellent point. I didn't realize that it was Monsanto and so on. I'm not surprised, but I didn't think about it because, like the thing about weed right now that's interesting is in the day, by the day, I mean, like 90s and before that all the way, THC was a reasonable amount within what you were smoking or however you were taking your weed and edibles or whatever. Now, because of the way that it's being farmed, you're taking THC that's 20-25% more, and that's the report that came out that's linking it to psychosis because that level that's not what we're talking about.
It's the same thing as like food and
that needs to have bigger and more and like mass produced.
And you're going to be more unhealthy, and so you're going to need to be still on pharmaceutical meds, and you're still going to be on my dole, and welcome to America.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem. My she's retired now, so we can throw her under the bus. My mother,
I'm dead.
I mean, 70s, like,
She was lit.
flower child. Just the epitome of like the opposite of me. Like, weed makes her like a better person. She taught for 35 years and would like smoke and write lesson plans and.
Yeah, she was lit. She was one of those people that like passed the
but
SATs with flying colors.
Because that's why I asked about that line because I'm like, I feel like for some people, like it does what maybe it should.
When the THC.
But that's what she'll say. She goes, back when like this was like my everyday life, there was no question of like, what kind is this? Or what does this one do? You just like got your weed.
But that was it. Depends on the strand. Like there's certain things that like you can take for pain management. I'm going to go with something that is an indica-based strand or hybrid that's heavier on the indica side because it helps with pain management. If I am going to knock out a 90-minute hot yoga class, then I'm going to do something that's a hybrid sativa based because it's a different effect. I'm able to concentrate more. I feel like I can focus. If I'm, training for just ran in a half marathon and used something that was more CBD heavy, but to help with the pain, like running all those miles each week, I'm running an average of like 50 miles a week. It's painful. Like, so it depends on that. Like blanketing, I think there's a lot of shitty weed out here.
There's a lot of shitty weed in New Jersey. So like we weren't getting the best weed.
Shitty weed and nice packaging.
So I think, you know, everyone, and we talked about pop culture and hip hop culture with, you know, when I was in, like, one of the reasons why I like didn't try, you know, cannabis very early was people were smoking, like they were opening up cigars and rolling it up. And I'm like, all that is like treated in chemicals. Right. Like that's treated in chemicals, and I just felt like that wasn't the way. Like, even, you know, that's like not my medium that I like choose to use it, but I just know that if you see those packages, I know it's like treated with all types of chemicals to probably cause you to have an addiction. If they're spraying it with God knows what. But I don't know, it's just like with so many things that are going on with different strains and things like that, I think like it just blanketed like, oh, you know, weed makes you lazy, or you can't do this because it's the wrong strain. Your body reacts to everything. It's just like a dosage of medicine. Like a 5 milligram of something will be okay for you because of your body chemistry, but maybe someone else who has, you know, a bigger body frame may need like 80 milligrams of the same drug for it to do the same effect. And so if you're, you know, smaller frame, you're taking that 80 milligrams, of course you're gonna be like laid out, you can't do anything again.
Not that story.
Yeah, you're gonna be laid out and not doing something, and it's not the strand for you. Like, and so, like you said, they were marketing like this gummy for this gummy because they have different effects. It's not just one plant. They're plants with several, like, I mean, there's hundreds of them with whether high in CBD or lower in THC or vice versa, or, you know, the cannabinoids on one may be better than one on the other. And so it's just like, because it's so new, we have access, it's trial and error. But if you look in Europe, like in Amsterdam, all of that is legal. They have a low drug use. It's not the same like it is here because they've had it for eons at this point. But the one thing that people want to do there that they can't do is cocaine. And so that's the drug that everyone wants to do because it's the one thing that's seen as like limited or exclusive or illegal. But no one's like, you can go to a coffee shop and get a hash brownie or whatever, and it's basically like going to Starbucks and grabbing a coffee. Like, no one gives a shit. But here, like, that's considered like, you know, oh, you have like the Willy Wonka like golden ticket. So it just like, we have to figure out a way where it's manageable, but not like exclusive. Like it needs to be, if it's gonna be open for everyone, but just in moderation. I think that's something that's hard for us because in, you know, Texas, everything's bigger is better. We have to do it differently.
And it's like you said too with that, like the first time, well, not even the first, the only time I ever tried coke. Sorry, Mom.
Mom knows. It's fine.
Sorry. But my friend that had, like, it was her birthday party or whatever, and she's from Germany. And like, at this point I already know like this is something that she did. She didn't do it a lot, but like would be here and there. And like the one time I tried it, the first thing she told me is like, where she's from, it's not looked at as like, oh, this is like a drug. Like they look at it almost like, it's almost like a medicine kind of thing. Like we use it for a certain reason. And I remember I did it that one time, like I was super drunk, did it, and like I felt immediately better. But it was like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm about to go back and do this. It wasn't that. Or like, oh, I'm gonna need to do this like, you know, 2 days from now. It was like, I remember in my head being like, she gave me this because I was clearly like drunk out of my mind and like I was not going anywhere good. And her giving that to me like helped me balance it out. And ever since then, like I never did it again because it was just like, I don't need it. Like I'm not hammered. I'm not feeling sick from drinking anything. There's no reason why I need it. Like I completely understood why I had it or why she gave, or why, not why she gave it to me, why she offered to me and why I took it. But I think it was just like that little thing of just that little conversation that was had. Not like, yo, you want to try this? You want to try some coke? You know, and like, you know, like it was like, yo, I'm giving this to you because clearly like you're beyond what you need to be. And we need to make sure that you're okay. So this is going to level you out some. But I don't think that's the conversation that happens with weed. I don't think anybody ever told their friend or anybody like, yo, you're panicking. Like,
But is
I'm gonna
that,
give you this, you know?
is her like perception from like not being raised here and not having the
And
like
that's what I think what it
extremist
is.
like
Yeah.
mentality that we have about like drug use, like in her being able to like recreationally do something or just to have you do a little bit and be like, it's fine.
And I think that's what it was, because like this is the same person who like now she has like a booming clientele. She makes edibles, you know, but like I remember when she first started it was like, oh yeah, you know, I have these people who want to buy it. And then like now she doesn't call them people or customers, she calls them like, you know, clients or patients, because she'll do like gluten-free things. She'll do people, you know,
that's
things for,
pretty cool.
you know, people with allergens and all that. And like she makes sure she doses everything out the right way, and she does her research and
That's
studies.
what I would want if we're going to be going down the legalization route, like piecemeal, because I want to be, you know, assisted with. I want to sit down and have someone be like, okay, you weigh this much, you eat this typically, you're this tall, you've had this sort of constitution for this many years, like you would be good with this, right? Like if I'm going to be medicated under some sort of way, I would want someone to then like doctor me up.
Exactly.
Right? I don't want to just walk into a store and pick one arbitrarily because I have now a menu. You know what I mean? And like, I'm even thinking about, Mary Pat, remember when we went to Argentina when we saw that holistic doctor?
Yes.
So this guy, I don't speak Spanish, but he speaks only Spanish. So we got through this together. You know what I'm saying?
Were you with like
we were I was like, hola, like I don't know. And we kind of walked through it, but so we were in Cordoba in Argentina, hella hot, okay, and I had been in the summer now for like a year and a half. And my body doesn't do summer. I can't breathe. My lungs feel like they're going to explode every day. The humidity, my skin, everything. So he takes my pulse. That's right. And he checks my tongue, the whole
That's why
thing.
you're here. That's why you're here.
And he basically tells me, which we figured out because I like my Google Translate and I had the miming. And he was like, oh, is this day 2 of your menstruation? And I was like, oh. And he was like, a wizard. And you're a wizard. How'd you know? And he goes, he's like, great, thanks, jerk. He turns around and he's like, have you been in summer for a year? And I was like, mm-hmm. And he said, you gotta get out of here. You need fall or spring only. Like that's where you need to be living. Wow. You need to be putting your feet in the grass and in the dirt. You need to get dirty. Like your body is too clean and you're sweating everything out and you need to be in a place where you can. And so that like, and then he did acupuncture and like the whole thing. Love it. But that sort of doctoring, we text in Spanish. It's so hilarious. But nonetheless, like, I joke around and tell people like I'll fly to Mexico City, round trip, get a spot, see all my doctors and then come back and it's still less than healthcare in this country because I'm serious, and also highly recommend because there are great doctors around the world. Health, medical tourism is real. You go to certain countries for dental, you go to certain countries for OBGYN, and Mexico City is excellent. I don't get paid by them, but I'm just saying, I could.
Checks.
And I just really F with basically other cultures figuring medicine out as opposed to particularly figuring this one out. And I'm finding in these conversations and all these episodes, I'm very much an escapist.
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fix this problem, so I'm gonna go. And that's a very me thing that I just realized that happened in this moment. I don't know what to say about that.
Profound.
Right. Profound.
Do you think of that as a kind of addiction?
Oh, leaving?
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Oh yeah. I never considered myself having an addictive personality in any other way. I have an obsessive personality. I get very obsessed with things. And I go 1000% van life, Anderson Street. I mean, we can talk about anything here. We can just knock them out. And I'm like 1,000,000% tunnel vision. And then when I get there, I also can't chill.
That's kind of like the kind of
Band-Aid?
cycle of getting high and coming down and getting high and coming down.
Mania is a
And
high.
I felt that, and I think when I was smoking pot a lot, that I felt like I was always, because the high ones, especially if you do it a lot, that it only lasts so long.
Right.
Yes.
And then you
It's
spend actually
annoying.
most of your time coming down.
Down.
I think that's why
Yeah.
people
It's
get
the
depressed.
worst.
I actually listened to someone who was writing a book about addiction, and she was describing the various drugs and she said that what marijuana does to the brain is that it causes the brain cells to communicate with each other at a higher rate, like more. So it increases connectivity between brain cells. And so that's why everything is so interesting. And that's why you can get kind of like lost in the thoughts and notice things and stuff like that. And then the way that drugs get adapted to by the body, that like if you become a chronic user of something like marijuana, that it's like, it just becomes so that when you're not on it, things are less interesting. And I had a pretty major switch in the amount of pot that I smoke, and I'm still working with it. And there is like a certain point where like it didn't become like like I knew when, like you were saying, when I would do it, that it wasn't gonna actually do what I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Maybe that's when drugs kind of break your heart, where you're just like,
because you already spent the money. You already spent the money.
Or you did something. I don't feel the change. And you know, they talk about addicts hitting rock bottom. Okay, but you know, maybe like for something like marijuana, you don't necessarily have to hit the rockest bottomest, right? But like,
I think too, you don't know what the rock bottom is with weed.
Yeah, no, because well, the one thing about weed is that it seems so inconsequential.
Right.
And it's also marketed to people now as inconsequential.
Correct.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
Correct.
have bad health effects. It's not really addictive. And it's like, you know, maybe we're not so sure about whether something is inconsequential. Probably if something feels inconsequential, you just haven't got to the consequences yet.
But I think that goes with everyone's body chemistry. Like everyone responds to things differently. So like Vicky, you mentioned like the indigenous population being, you know, having an adverse effect to alcohol versus like someone who doesn't have those same traits or genetically, you know.
Well, she was talking about historical trauma.
Yeah, definitely.
Predisposition.
Right. I'm just saying like it can be a little bit different like for each person, but like you can't, to me, I feel like the blanket statement of saying like, oh, this can be like, you know, cause a lot of issues. It just depends on how much a person is using or how their body responds. Like it's just like milligrams, like again, like someone's body frame or whatever may be able to handle a little bit more than someone who can't, who has a smaller frame.
But also in a culture that overdoes it.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to blanket.
It is, and I think it's also like my fiance, he gave me permission to speak.
Okay, good call. Good presence also.
This much is
Because he had a drug problem for a lot of years and has been sober for almost like 7 years now. But he kind of like, no, this is Ben.
I have opioids.
Yeah. And okay, so to this day though, he relies very heavily, and this may not be considered like a drug, but he has a vape like pen and then like a CBD pen that literally you would think it was like air and water, like his reliance. And I try to like be careful in terms of like saying to him like you're doing that a lot, like I don't know what the rules are, like is this too much? And so for me, I feel like what I see is that, and this is what I'm getting to, is that it's more of just like the action of like picking up the pen when like he's feeling some type of way and like taking a hit. And I've taken a hit of both of them and I feel like literally nothing, and like I never like touch them because of that, but like for him it does something. And I'm not saying it's because of like my body chemistry or my mental state, but I feel like for him it's just the action. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people too. It's like I'm taking this thing that's helping me with whatever's going on in my head, and now like I feel better or I'm good until you need it again. And I think that's what it is for.
Well, it's like when I went to therapy, you know, and I was like trying to cut back on smoking, he said like the biggest thing is you have to create other habits, you know? So like a lot of people will drop a habit and replace it with another habit that they don't need to do. So like even with that, you know, like I think of people like Dave Chappelle, he was on what was it? Riding with Comedians in Cars with
I don't know.
with Seinfeld.
Seinfeld, yeah. Oh my God, those are so good.
They're good, right? So like he's sitting in the cafe with Dave Chappelle, and the whole time Dave Chappelle's just like bent over, like smoking on his like Juul, and he asks himself,
on Juul.
So he's like, "Yo, what's the end game with you?" And he's like, "You know, I have this because like he's a heavy smoker, marijuana and cigarettes, but it's like." I think the biggest thing when even with smoking, like you talk about, you know, cooking and like edibles, my girls have suggested to me plenty of times, like, yo, why don't you try edibles? And it's like, yo, it's not the same. And like, I realized like maybe it's not the weed, you know, like maybe it's actually the action, like that action of smoking that I'm addicted to.
And like taking a time out from reality.
And being like,
like
whatever it is that you do.
I have a friend who won't smoke unless you allow him to roll up. Like unless he can be the person that actually does it.
The action, the preparation, it's his ritual.
Yeah.
The ritual.
Also too with your body chemistry, it's a different form. So when it's like when you're smoking it, it's processed through your lungs. You're going to get a
immediate
different experience. If you are eating it, it's digestive to your stomach, your liver. And you're gonna get a different type of experience. Like it has to go through. So like either you go to sleep or it's like too much or whatever. And people like you always hear, like you see memes, you see these stories like, oh, I thought, it's just one bite or whatever. It was like so good and I ate the whole thing at one time. Like, no, don't do that.
Have you been there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I thought, no, like you have to literally treat it as a medication. Like you can't just be like, oh, this tastes so delicious, I'm gonna like kill this entire bag of popcorn. No, because
I'm sorry. So on this note of like, I'm so fascinated lately with like the idea of using them not just to fix a problem, but maybe to like, or not to like say fix a depression or fix like a specific thing, but to bring something to the surface. Like, have you guys heard of hallucinogenics and like, well, ayahuasca does this?
Yeah,
and, like,
of
certain
course.
medications
You're like,
and,
tell me more about
this like y'all know my background.
so you like microdosing, like
but
that?
like, okay, so my background, so just like brief like snippet into my life.
Go for it.
I was super not into drugs for a very, like I was adamantly anti-drug for a very long time. Like lots of shit with the family, lots of stuff, seeing friends get addicted to crazy shit, coke, whatever,
and you're
weed,
from
whatever, Vegas.
Oh yeah.
I just thought that was important.
Yeah, I guess, right? I mean, it's a thing. All right.
Kind of a thing.
Hey, she right there?
At least for us, East Coasters were like,
And I was probably in my mid-20s before I tried anything outside of alcohol. And I was very judicious with alcohol even. Like I was so careful.
Right.
And every time I tried something or I was around drugs, it was just negative. Everything was negative. It was someone abusing it, or I had really terrible experiences the first few times I tried weed, hallucinations, terrible shit. Stuck in like a vortex of death, you know the feeling. It was yikes. And then I just reached a point not long after we met, I think.
The first
where
time. That would be the first time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Where
Hello.
I was reaching this point in my life where I decided to start diving more into drugs, and none of it had to do with fear or escapism or like this desire to fix something in me. It was actually that I had been so happy for so long, you can hate me right now, that I was like, I feel like there's some shit I'm not dealing with. And I actually wanted to try hallucinogenics to open that up, because I was like, okay, I'm really good, and like I feel like there's got to be something there, because like we all have our traumas, we all have our stuff, and there was a part of me that was like, there's shit I'm not dealing with, and like how do I rip that open?
Bring us to the end.
I know, right? I wish there was like a more climactic end to the story, but
you went to Burning Man.
I tried acid at Burning Man, and then I tried shrooms at Burning Man, and in both experiences, I was just a happy person.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is great, because my experience with weed was the polar opposite. It was so traumatic. It was
Was
so
it because
awful,
of the
so
perception
terrifying.
that you had about it, though? Is that like maybe why?
Who were you with?
I think a lot of it was that idea of going into it, that like I'm going into this with an open mind of like, bring it. And not
and
a
also
mind
an intention
of
of like, I want to know more, something.
Like,
and like, who were you with?
Curious, good friends.
Right.
Which I also was when I did weed, but like, did weed, smoked weed, ate weed, whatever.
Whatever you did.
All the things.
But maybe your body chemistry maybe responds better to that versus like cannabis. Like,
but acid?
I don't know. Maybe I do
I
blanket statement a lot. I just feel like hallucinogens for people in general, I don't care who you are, can be seriously helpful if you're a person that wants to delve more deeply into purpose, why you're here, what you're doing, what some patterns are in your life that you've started to recognize but couldn't quite figure out why they're there. Habits, why am I addicted? Why do I have an addictive personality? Why am I obsessive? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough? You know, these are things that if we're not gonna have a more mental health preventative culture, then we are gonna be, and I think that we should all be steered toward a more intentional use of drugs then. Yeah. And I do believe that is hallucinogens, right? Because there are no reports of hallucinogens being able to be so overused that you overdose, or really want to bring you to the edge of a cliff and jump off and fly. You know, you don't want to go and do those things on, the acids, the LSDs.
I totally agree with you, and I've done plenty, and I think they've been great. But I also think that especially in some of the maybe communities that I like to be involved with, like the kind of alternative health community and the kind of like, dudes who CrossFit kind of thing, they start to idolize hallucinogen. And I wonder if it's just another part of this magic bullet syndrome of just like, this is going to be the thing. Because I've also noticed.
I didn't know it was becoming trendy. That's
yes, and Denver is considering, either decriminalizing or legalizing magic mushrooms. And I read a book, Michael Pollan's book about hallucinogens, the way they use them for PTSD. And
also acid test.
I think that's great. Book. You know what though, that when they do those studies, and for people with terminal cancer, when they do those studies, they have to have, it's part of their control, that they have to have never done it before ever. Yeah. And the first time, is amazing, for sure. And other times pass that can be, but you
always try to get to the first time.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the problem. And if you can, the way that I feel about hallucinogens, this similar way about ecstasy too, which is kind of like hallucinogens, but kind of not. It's somewhere between like coke and hallucinogens. But like that, they give you a feeling that after you do it enough times can become familiar, and it can be nice for sure, but it's not, to me anyway, my opinion is similar, that it's not the thing. It might show you to the thing. And I feel this way about weed too. Like, it's like, I like to make music, and like just every once in a while, let me get high and make music.
Right. Let's see what this inspiration is like.
But that is the temptation. That's the problem. And it's hallucinogens, the same thing. And I wonder if about this kind of idolizing of hallucinogens because they're used by indigenous cultures. Like, there may be some kind of like white projection going on there for sure, and kind of Orientalist-ish kind of things. And then just, my thing that I've said all along is just like, the drugs are not the thing, they're a tool.
Is it a crutch or a tool? Right.
But the thing is, even this woman that I was listening to on the radio, she talked about the difference between somebody who has an addiction and somebody who doesn't, is that the person who's an addict uses a drug as a tool to fix something. So a crutch is also a tool, right? Yeah. And so there's problems with tools. You can hammer a nail, you can bash somebody's face in. It really is. And it's unfortunate, but maybe that's the only way life is that it's up to you to be able to walk that path and, to recognize, hey, I'm going off the path. Let me get back on. Unfortunately, people are less able to do that depending on their socioeconomic conditions. However, everybody, you don't want to deny people their ability to be responsible. And that, ultimately there's a way to, it's unfortunate, but you gotta start somewhere, and a drug can affect anyone in any number of ways, and sometimes problematically, and like, you gotta get through it or not. There's the option. You either get through it or you don't. And you could have a low-level suffering, like be a privileged tech bro who smokes pot 3 times a day.
Must be
nice.
You know what?
He's still got problems.
Right. He's still dealing with something.
And for his own self, if you take away his privilege, you don't want to be. If you extend compassion, you ought to extend it to everybody at a certain level. So I don't know. The hallucinogen thing, I've done them. I like them. I'll do them again, but. Like I said, glasses, not a way to go.
Yeah.
thank you for sticking with us through this episode on drugs. And it got a little heavy for sure. Addiction, opioids, recreational activity, it goes up and down, what can we say? But next week, we want you to stay tuned where we're gonna get really into the NCAA. Is it a racket? Is it not a racket? We've got some leggy ball players with us, so you're gonna wanna stay tuned. And as always, like, subscribe, and comment down below. Also hit the bell, and we'll see you next time.